Mabuhay Lazami. My name is Veronica, host of this podcast, Everything's Political. Broadcasting here at Radyo Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. It's been a minute. This is Veronica, and this is the second Wednesday of the month, so you know it. I'm going to be talking political, but I am joined here by
Mathilde,
who is the
wife.
And for today's episode, I invited Mathilde to join me because I think it's a fun way to have a glimpse of our relationship and connecting it to politics, actually. So for those who are not sure, on March 15, I believe, ICC has arrested former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte for crimes against humanity. So he's actually in The Hague right now, imprisoned, I would say, because he's accused. And when we heard that story, you and I were like, oh, ho, 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 ho.
It's a full circle moment.
Right. And you were actually the one who suggested to talk about it in my podcast because, yes, everything is political. So maybe it would have been 2016 because that's when he was elected. Oh, God. It's been a while, eh? It's been a while since we've been together, huh?
Yeah.
And so it's about 2016, and you and I just started talking anonymously, and you kind of found out that I'm Filipino. And one of the only topics you know about the Philippines was about Duterte at that time.
Yeah, the war on drugs.
The war on drugs. And I believed I was telling you that, oh yeah, I was from the Philippines and I completely agree with what he's doing. He needs to clean up the streets, so to speak. And I was, as you know, I guess I had such a conservative mindset at that time. And you went on and saying how
I called him a dictator. Mm-hmm. I said what he was doing is not only unethical, but criminal. Mm-hmm. And that addicts are deserving of kindness and understanding and healthcare, which is not part of the war on drugs plan that he was enacted.
That's true. And I was like, what is this white girl? I mean, I didn't even know if you were a white girl at that time, but I was like, what is this white girl saying?
Stranger.
Yeah, this stranger saying, like, this is my home country. I know what I'm talking about.
Was it the first time someone pushed back a little on you, even though...
I mean, I think it's one of the first time that someone dared to push back because, again, we met anonymously. So I couldn't care less who you are, and we don't know each other. So I think I was pretty open to be criticized because at the end of the day, I didn't even know your name.
I'm no one to you.
Exactly. You're someone off the net, and that's it. So I was like, okay, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, tell me, why do you think this guy will save the Philippines and the Filipinos, right? And
you're like, entertain me.
Yeah. I was like, okay, fine, entertain me. And then you went on and on and on with so many, like you started enumerating all of the things that is like not good. And in hindsight, I just started my university at that time for political science. So I was pretty open to hearing a lot of people's like opinion and like taking that into consideration and
having your critical thinking muscle work a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's when my brain muscles started like really working out. And I think you were one of the first people whom I'm like, okay, fine, I'm listening. What do you got, right? And yeah, what did you got at that time when I was completely just speechless? And mind you, now I'm very good at keeping like shut up, and like listen to people and giving up space. I normally dominate the space, and so I was like, fine, okay, I'm listening. So what did you get at that time that completely silenced me, love?
I thought it was nice that you were open to hear my side of it. I think like, right, on the internet, meeting anonymously, like you could have just blocked me. You could have just ended the conversation there. And that's honestly a lot of what I encountered talking to strangers on the internet. They just were not open to having an opposing view. We're all in our little echo chambers on the net, right?
Yeah, and that was 2016. So now more podcast bros just have access to equipment, and then they just
talking to themselves in an empty room
and just air everything out in public, and it will bite you. it will bite you so bad.
We're so lucky our app doesn't exist anymore.
Right, but I do have my podcast that I have talked about my political opinions, and somehow
In public, where the government of the U.S. can see it.
I know, right?
You're on a government watch list somewhere.
I really do hope not. But during that time of me essentially, you kind of radicalized me at some point,
We had this conversation. I really think I pushed you like in a different path, possibly, which is funny because you had just started poli-sci at the time. You were very concerned with all of these subjects, right? You wanted to learn more about it. You wanted to get better at arguing about it.
Yeah.
Because that's the Veronica way. Veronica wants to argue.
Oh, yeah.
Veronica wants to yap with some references.
And at that time, I met you after I obliterated Laura. So Laura,
Our dearest Laura.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Laura. I mean, we've made peace with this and we've had conversations about this. But you know
at
what?
my behest, mind you. I was like, you need to apologize to Laura because I want her to sing at our wedding.
I think both of us, because at some point when I kept on seeing her around, I was like, I'm really feeling heavy in my loob that like I think I knew that I was in the wrong now, but at that time
you just wanted to be right.
I just wanted to debate people because no one ever like tell me I was wrong. And so this was all public, and I kind of basically publicly like dragged Laura, our lead audio senior engineer, who's going to be editing this recording, along with Kyla and Fenny sometimes. So yeah, I met you after I kind of like told Laura off. And
when I met you, you used to debate random people in Facebook comment sections. That was like how you spent your time.
Yes, I didn't have anyone to bounce off my ideas.
It's how you got your political conversation fill. Yeah. Right.
And at that time, now at this current like mental like space, the conversation between me and Laura at that time was really that diaspora versus me from the Philippines. And I didn't see myself as part of the diaspora at that time, just because it
had been less than 10 years.
Yeah. So that was what, about 2012, 2013.
So 5 years after you came to Canada, right?
Roughly around that time, yes.
You still had a very deep connection to the Philippines. I know that growing up, your parents always watched the news. You always talked about what was happening in the Philippines. Yeah. And so that connection was still there, and you had really no one to talk about it with other than your family.
And, my family in some cases, in some ways, pretty progressive, but in some other cases pretty conservative. And mind you, I think I was speaking to someone who is also now progressive. I don't want to name drop people. I didn't ask for their permission to talk about this, but my dad I remember was like, oh yeah, we need people like Duterte because we need like kamay na bato, like iron fist. We needed discipline because hindi disiplinado were so undisciplined that we needed someone who has kamay na bato, which is iron fist. And a lot of progressive Filipino organizations, in a sense, kind of like agreed with it because there was some sort of like sympathy and like aggression towards people who's like abusing us, like the colonial masters, so to speak, right? And so there were sentiments of like,
this is the way we're getting back control over our country.
There will be someone who will fight for us, and that was quote unquote Papa Digong, right? And so I had that type of mentality, and then I didn't really hear. I mean, as you said, we were all in an echo chamber at that time, and I think that was a really good case study of how social media was basically used to manipulate and gain elector, right? The Facebook is, I think, still now free of use. So even if you don't have data in the Philippines, if you have Facebook, you have access to internet. So that's how Filipinos are basically manipulated, because here you pay monthly or you have a prepaid card, and in the
you can use it however you want.
Exactly. Same thing in the Philippines. Most of them are on prepaid, and you buy internet for like 2 days, 3 days, and such. But if you have Facebook, you don't need to buy those. You just have access to it. And so, Cambridge Analytica reconfirmed this hypothesis that we were the petri dish, so to speak,
for radicalizing people online and manipulating voter sentiment, right?
Mm-hmm. And there were more and more propaganda coming into my way on Facebook. I'm barely on Facebook. I haven't
nowadays, no, but back then,
yeah, that was everyone's basically means. And me being a diaspora Filipino, and Friendster is not a thing anymore, then a lot of us have moved on to Facebook, and that was my way of still connecting to my friends and families back home. And so I didn't really see, I was a very pretty much exposed to Duterte propaganda, like the good ones. And so seeing Laura's post, I was like, you're a Canadian, you go back home and everyone treats you like Canadian. And so at some point,
you don't have a vested interest in this country the way that I do.
Mm-hmm. And essentially it was saying like you were a privileged person, so you don't know anything.
Which is rich coming from you, someone who did grow up in the Philippines with quite a substantial amount of privilege. I think the first time that I had like a really big culture shock was not even a culture shock. It was a class shock when you told me that you grew up having maids in the house. That for me was like, eee. In Canada, people who have maids are not just rich, they're very, very rich. Like, it's not a middle class thing at all, even though I do think most people would consider you middle class in the Philippines. But it's just like, it's so cheap. Labor there is so cheap that even middle class families can afford it. But I remember that really shocking me. And that's probably one of the first things you taught me about the Philippines that I didn't learn from the internet, right?
And you know what? Before I respond to what you're going to say, because a lot of you said it yourself, it's labor in the Philippines is cheap, and mind you, there's millions of Filipinos, so your output, your labor can be negotiated. But you'll hear more about it after this short commercial break. And we're back again from our commercial break. And yeah, to respond to what you just said, yes, admittedly, now looking back at it, like, yes, we were strong middle class. I would say like lower middle class, but, still middle class. We were, I believe that we were a bit comfortable than other.
Your family owned property, your grandparents were educated.
Yeah, my family owned a property. My grandparents owned their property. They have a property in the province.
You did figure skating, which is not exactly a cheap sport even in Canada, but in the Philippines, it's definitely not a cheap sport, right?
Yeah. So my childhood, I could say that it is quite privileged even in the Philippines. So can you imagine like the transition of us here, and we have to cook our own stuffs and such. But anyway,
let's go back to when we first started talking about the war on drugs and what I knew about the war on drugs and why I was so passionate about it.
Right, because you were exposed to different news that I was. I mean, I was pretty much getting a lot of my news either from Facebook or from what I see in TV Patrol or GMA. So what were you like exposed to during that time about the Duterte?
It was mostly English language news from around the world, like Deutsche Welle, and documentaries about the war on drugs. And one thing that had really marked me was this picture of someone's body following an extrajudicial killing. And he had a sign on it that said, "Pusher ako," that the killer had put on the person. And you couldn't even see their face, but that was the only Tagalog I knew, because it was translated under the legend of the picture, right? Like, pusher ako means I am a pusher. And so the killer put this onto that person. All of these assumptions, which as a police person possibly trying to have an investigation, which now we know wasn't really happening, but also just media people, everyday people seeing this body on the street. All of a sudden there's this heavy stigma and this sense that the person deserved what happened to them.
Yeah.
And so who needs a judicial system when the bad people are getting their due, right?
And I remember, I think one of my thoughts at that time was that, well, you know what? Well, it's a war on drugs, so they are all collateral damage. You know, there's always going to be innocent people who's going to be like caught in this like crossfire, but someone needs to clean the streets, and the drugs, they shouldn't be just taking drugs. They should just be in school or something like that. And
I found this so enraging because at the time I already knew that not everyone is dealt the same cards in life.
Yeah.
And privilege is real, it is tangible. And some people are just kind of led into this life without any choice whatsoever.
Yeah.
But others who were given good choices and good options never had to make the choices that these people had to make. And that's what I wanted you to understand. And I think having you try to hear me out,
Yeah.
you owed me nothing. You really did. But I think you respected me and the way I spoke to you, and I came at it with valuable arguments or valid arguments. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that one thing that you also mentioned was the aspect of health, that this is a health crisis.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, I just finished CJEP, and so we were talking about the crisis in Vancouver, one of the case studies that I've studied about drug use in Vancouver. And I think it was a social movement.
Homelessness.
Yes. So like the social movements and like social rights happening and in Canada. And one of the case studies was what's happening in Vancouver and the rise of really like drug use and how that is connected to homelessness and once again connected to mental health and well-being. And I think slowly I kind of connected the thoughts myself with your patients for sure. But again, I feel like it also goes to show how we were, as the diaspora, we're not really exposed to mental health or like well-being. And so when
You're also a Catholic nation, so any addiction, any criminality is seen as a sin first and foremost. It's a failure of self. It's a lack of morality rather than truly just not being afforded the same choices that others who will not end up addicts on the street were afforded.
like I can hear myself hearing it from my own parents being like, well, alam mo naman na hindi maganda yung droga eh, so bakit gumamit ka? Like you knew that drug is not good and yet you used it, right? And we forget the factors of, again, loneliness or just being in such crowd. You know, it's nature versus nurture, but actually it's both. Now that you think about it, a lot of this youth, my privilege, you know, like I get to go after my school. I go to skate. My brothers go to their, you know, after school activities. I was pretty much in sports a lot. So that was my way of like distraction so that I wouldn't be part of this crowd where the proximity and access to drugs are more present. Like,
and even then, you lived in a barangay that literally was a gated community. Those people are not your neighbors, honey. They never would be. Valenzuela doesn't, back then, I don't know about now, right? We haven't been, and you haven't been back in so long. But Valenzuela was never going to be the place where you would have extrajudicial killings. Maybe there were. We should probably research that, actually.
I don't know. You know, it's the city I grew up at. It's one of the city that was added, one of the last city that was added in the Metro Manila region. So it's like
it borders a province.
Yeah, it's like the Laval or like the West Island part. Like it's
suburban. It's calmer. It's quieter. There's families.
Yeah, it's still kind of agriculture, but also a bit industrial. I mean, now they're very much modern. One of their rising stars, so to speak, as a city in the Metro Manila region. But back then it was quiet. So I obviously you would sometimes pass by Palenque and like you would see like les itinérants and those kind of things. Like it's not really a gated community, but it is a very small subdivision that a lot of people kind of know everyone. It came to the point where if I really, really, really need to pee, I can just knock in one of the neighbor and I'm like, pwede pong umihi, like can I pee please? Because it just has that type of like the village, how do you call it?
Everyone knows each other. Yeah. Neighborhood, right?
Neighborhood.
A real neighborhood.
Exactly. So I pretty much agree with the sentiment of like other places in Manila are like, yeah, it needed to be cleaned up. But I think when I started reading those and listening to you more and then expanding my horizons, so to speak, and hearing more stories, that's when my mentality started shifting, right? Because at the end of the day, no one really wants you to be addicted to the point where you have no more control of no more agency of your life. I knew about the addicts when they like smell the rugby, and they get addict and then
that's an entire other world of like all of the weird names that Filipinos have for drugs.
Right, yeah.
Shabu shabu.
Shabu shabu.
Yeah, the Japanese immigrant to the Philippines, like, you guys do what? With shabu shabu?
Yeah. So it's obviously I was 10, 11 when I left the Philippines, but the problem of drug use and violence has been present growing up for me. So I already kind of had a negative perspective about this whole situation.
I think most people do, right?
And so when you kept on connecting it back to like
public health crisis, a housing crisis, a lack of economic opportunities.
Yeah. So some of those tidbits that you've dropped and stuffs that I've learned from CJEP, like I started connecting the dots. I'm like, and then you're like, don't you think that your people deserve better? And I'm like, okay, yes, of course, right?
To try to get you to connect with these people as like one nation, right? These are your people as well. Just because they're killed indiscriminately in the street doesn't make them less Filipino.
And I think that's when the shift of me really being more empathetic and understanding why they arrive and why is it that their choices is to that. And that's when I became a bit more active with the progressive organizations here in Montreal. That's really when I watched this screening that was organized by Anak Bayan at that time at Concordia, and I said, okay, why not? And it was
funeral director of Manila.
Exactly. When it was this was a documentary where the director, I think Leia Borromeo, I think that's her name. Her parents fled the country during Marcos' dictatorship, and essentially it was connecting at the fact that Duterte's administration is a dictator, and basically shadowed the funeral director who basically does like pretty much everything. And the amount of calls and bodies that he
gets in the middle of the night, like, this person was killed, we have their family here, they need to retrieve the body to arrange a funeral. And he was talking about what these people look like, what their families are feeling, the immense amount of grief that happens when someone is killed out of the blue without judiciary process is the key here, which is why the ICC saw fit to have not only an investigation, but an indictment and now a trial.
Yeah. And I think that me being in political science, like studying more about like équité procédurale, like fairness and such, and finding out or reading the news about how Duterte was like, I will pre-sign this like reports or this request for warrant to go after this pushers or
Complete disregard for due process.
yeah,
right?
like there was zero due process, and in my head I'm like, sapas pa.
No.
I think that's when I'm just like, what do you mean? You give them carte blanche?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that got me the most into this whole story before we met was there is no due process, and therefore there's not even an investigation in are those people actually pushers? Are those people users in the first place? And also, is that an appropriate reaction to kill drug dealers, to kill people who are suspected of using? Because that's an immense amount of people, first of all.
Yeah.
And because there's no due process, no investigation, you wind up with people being falsely accused, killed because of gossip, because of rumors in the community. And also, I just remember thinking, wow, isn't this like the Salem witch trials? Like everyone's pointing fingers and then no due process. Just this person has been accused, they deserve death.
Yeah. It essentially has created an impunity, and again that pointing fingers. And Filipinos were even though there's over 120 million Filipinos, like we're tight in a sense that everyone knows everyone's business, you know, who got pregnant by who, even though they're not married, everyone knows the answer, but no one says.
A nation of chismosos.
Yeah, so we're a huge like gossipers, because we want to be able to be like in the news, like what is happening. 'Cause, you know, one can say that's also a way to protect the community among each other, but it could also be destroying everyone's reputation. And at this
when
point,
you're poor and have nothing to live for, your reputation is nearly all you
shit.
have.
Yes. And so we would hear lists of people, like, for example, if you don't like that neighbor because they did you wrong and they look at you differently, all you can do is utter, oh, maybe ano yan, drug user din yan. And like, because there's no due process, there's no way to actually confirm that. And everyone and police
Everyone's
are just
going off a hunch.
Exactly. And everyone was just like trigger happy, right? The police are just trigger happy because they won't be held accountable. You know? And so I think for me, that's when I'm like, wait, no, wait, hold on. What is happening in here? And I think that's when my privilege really was confronted, because the same way that I have accused Laura of, oh, you're Canadian, you don't know anything, I realized that I am Canadian, you know, and that I will not be touched by those anymore, so to speak. And even if I'm not Canadian and I was still in the Philippines in the same social standing as I was back before we left, I was already strong middle class. So I wouldn't even be in that position. And even if I was in that position, I believe that my parents would have had enough like
wherewithal to stage an intervention or something, right?
Or like pull some strings, so to speak. So that's just the reality of nations like the Philippines. Like these social class always clashes. So at some point when we were talking and like throughout our relationship, it became war on drugs, basically just became like war against poor.
Yeah.
Because if you have money, because we know that people from Makati, like they're acquiring even higher quality type of drugs and no one bats an eye.
I think that's, we did make a very strong through line with what was happening in Vancouver at the time, which is that, of course, those who get prosecuted for drug use, public drug use, drug selling, like those are usually recent immigrants who were caught in a really bad bind, or Indigenous folks who have no attachment to Vancouver as a city and end up just by themselves and need to trust people who cannot be trusted. Like, looking at who gets booked in Vancouver for drug use, it's actually insane, especially back then. Like, oh, it's just Indigenous people. Funny how that works.
Yeah. I mean, I think we pretty much talked about the beginning and like how Duterte being the president of the Philippines and just me seeing it on this very privileged and safe side being Canadian really brought out a lot of conversations between you and me. And let's tackle that a bit more, because when we saw the whole news, we're like, you know what, it's time for us to talk about more of how this kind of developed.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that after this short break. And we're back again from our commercial break. Yes, you were saying, love.
The reason this matters so much in our relationship, this whole conversation around the war on drugs, is because that was the first of many conversations that were very political in nature. And to this day, like, do we go a single day without talking about politics? I don't think we do. It's just such part of who we are, right? And when we think of building a relationship, at the time we didn't know that we were going to end up on the road to marriage. But definitely it was so necessary to building our relationship because we needed to build that rapport of respecting each other's perspective and also respecting that we're going to have different perspective on things sometimes, right? That's just part of having a relationship with someone. But more important than that is building a balance of what we perceive as our moral compasses and how we can make it overlap. And that's something I talk about all the time when, especially talking to single people, is you can't just marry anyone. You need to have compatibility on several levels. But the part that matters the most to me, and I think the part that we mesh so well on, is ethical compatibility, is having the same moral compass or very similar and being able to hear each other out when it comes to looking at the news. This news story came out. How do we feel about it? What do we think is the just way of handling an issue? And I think that's the reason we don't fight ever, because, well, one thing that I always tell people is when you're first dating, a show you should watch together is What Would You Do by John Quinones.
What Would You Do by John Quinones, yes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting show where basically it's a hidden camera show where they put people in ethical dilemmas of what would you do in X situation? If you are at the bar and you see someone putting something in someone's drink, are you going to be a bystander or are you going to act, right?
Yeah, we kind of like watching and also dissecting that. I mean, we watched some of them off YouTube and like 2 minutes in and we're already...
For me, it's like a family show. My family used to watch this like every Friday. We used to record the shows and watch them together and just talk about it for hours. It was so fun. And doing it with you was also very like fun. And we get to actually get to the meat of it, which is like, do you think it's a just way to act? Do you think it's an ethical path? Right?
And actually discover not only about each other, but what would you do, right? So I think it's I think with the conversation about Duterte, you being like, ew, how can you just support a murderer like that?
And asking you, what would you do if it was someone you loved who was accused and dead in the street?
Yeah.
And then you had to mourn this person while knowing that someone in your community did that to your family.
Yeah. And I think that's really when things started, like the cog really starts like fitting in.
Building empathy.
When we watch another screening, again, this was... I think a collaboration with Focus and Mufasa. So the Filipino organizations, like student organization at Concordia, and then the one at McGill. And we were watching it off some basement somewhere at near the McGill campus. Was it? Yeah, McGill campus. And I believe that one of the people who were watching how the farmers were essentially being killed in their plots of land,
which is up for grabs.
Yeah, it was
the patriarch of the family is
dead, it was
right?
a Hacienda Luisita. So basically, like, it was ancestral lands of these farmers, and essentially because basically they were being taken advantage of, and at some point they found out that they no longer own the land that they've lived it for as long as they remember. And at that time, still a lot of Filipinos are still here in the diaspora. OFW still support Duterte, because once again, if you left the country, it's because you said it earlier, the lack of employment opportunities or just financial opportunities. So Filipinos to this day, we're still suffering from brain drain, labor drain, care drain, all of the drain, human resources drain. Like a lot of Filipinos to this day, their dream is to get out of the country because there's just no opportunity available in the homeland. And so
And some people will take dodgy ways to do that, right? Like do business with a random agency that might just traffic you.
yeah, kapit sa patalim.
Like it's that lack of opportunity leads people down really bad paths, and that's honestly what I see as like most people that become drug pushers or fall into addiction. It's because you just did not have good options in life.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah. And so I think I remember the participant was saying that, oh, but so, they after this, most of us would still be coming back home to our parents who support this president. And we just watched these videos of like, clearly he...
All of the reasons you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I remember the participant was like, but what can we say for our parents to... who still supports this guy, right? And we come back home and they're the one who puts a roof over our head. So what do we say? And I think at that time, have we been living together? Yeah, I think we've been living together that time because I had my mental health crisis at that time.
Yeah.
And then the person, the social worker was like, maybe you should go on and see the community. And I'm like, I don't wanna. And you're like, let's go and like watch this like screening with other student organizations. And it's like
People who share our values.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I think I responded by saying, there are people's experiences. Are you just going to invalidate their experiences? Are you telling me that, Kian de los Santos, like life does not matter, right? So it took me saying that out loud I'm like, oh, wait. Okay, so, one person that we see a lot kind of like martyred, so to speak. I don't like to use that word, but...
I think in a Catholic country, the word martyr hits different. So I do think you should be using the word martyr.
So yeah, I think that was a push for me to be more active with these progressive Filipino organizations and using more and more like examples of OFW's children being accused of drug use or like drug pusher and
having no real person there to fight for them, right?
yeah. So yeah, I think that's one of a good way to highlight how you and I kind of strengthen our relation. Not strengthen, but
we built it that way.
Yeah,
honestly.
found ways of like going through and navigating this very heavy topic. And for me to be pro Duterte and now super against Duterte to the point where I'm on the street, and then
do I take credit for that?
You take a lot of credit because you were basically the one to push me to like out of my comfort zone and think about other people. So, I was so full of myself to the point where I didn't care hurting Laura's feelings publicly like that. But yeah, I guess it took a white girl to be like, are you for real? How can you support that person? But
I was really self-righteous at the time. So maybe I always say this, we met at the right time.
Yeah.
We influenced each other in good ways.
Yeah.
Your confidence rubbed off on me a little bit, and I think my empathy rubbed off on you.
It's true. Well, there you go. That's why when we heard about the arrest, clap, 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 we just look at each other. It's like, what a full circle moment. I feel like a chapter of our lives kind of closed when
in a very personal way, in a non like global implications way, but just like both of us.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is how we connect it to, again, even our relationship is political, because these political topics were so dear to me and also so dear to you in terms of like talking about it as a huge public health crisis. And for me being like, you know what, you're right. Because yeah, everything's political.
Hell
and
yeah.
This is the name of my podcast, how I was radicalized and how I started talking politics and connecting it back, connecting the dots, because yeah, we need to be aware of this, and I'm sharing this to you along with
Mathilde.
because sharing is caring and knowledge is power. So Let's empower each other. Once again, this is Veronica, host of this podcast, Everything's Political, joined by me, Mathilde, here broadcasting on Radyo Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. See you once again in the second Tuesday. I can't even say Tuesday. See you all again on the next second Wednesday of the month. Bye.
Bye.
Best of friends since way back when love was right for us. That's then. Used to think you were heaven sent. Things are clearer now in the end. Soon you'll realize I did the most. In the past, now that's where you go, baby.
What are you trying to say? You know it's always gonna be you, right?
So done with you, done being blue, not about you no more, baby. Finally love myself the way I once loved you. I'm brand new, who are you? Took a puff, said enough, shit's too rough. All I wanted, you lacked, it was love. Oh, I'm a dime, baby, you see. Should've never set me free. Out of time, G-boy, you're gonna miss me.
I've been thinking way too much. I've been feeling way too much. I've been smoking way too much, feeling numb, and I wish that I gave two fucks. I've been thinking way too much. I've been feeling way too much. I've been smoking way too much, feeling numb, and I wish that I gave two fucks. I've been rolling with the squad, west side, you know where we are. Packed out backseat, 5 in the car, oh God. Take another puff, now I'm gone. Elevate my soul, now I'm dapping up the Lord like, it gon' be alright, it gon' be alright. You just need a fight, you just need a fight. take some time, but that's just part of life. Moving past heartbreak, feeling like I'm in a race or a chase to replace all the space that she left behind. And I said I'm fine, but that's a lie. It's been too damn long and she ain't left my mind. And it hurts inside the worst of night. Way she crossed my mind just passing by. And I want to cry, I stop and sigh. I cross my heart and hope to die. I've been thinking way too much. I've been feeling way too much. I've been smoking way too much, feeling numb, and I wish that I gave two fucks. I've been thinking way too much. I've been feeling way too much. I've been smoking way too much, feeling numb, and I wish that I gave two fucks.
Kamusta, what up, salut tout. C'est moi, Fanny Christo, et vous écoutez à Radio Kapwa sur 90.3 FM CKUT. Nous sommes le 12e avril, et oui, il a fait nuage, mais ça c'est habituel pour le mois d'avril et le début de printemps. Donc, pour les actualités des Philippines cette semaine, je vais vous partager quelques bonnes nouvelles. En fait, souvenez-vous, on trouve ces articles du site web s'appelle Rappler et on vous donne un extrait d'article complet. Ensuite, cette histoire a été écrite par Delphine Diokino le 30 mars et on y va. Alex Yala says real work starts now after magical Miami Open run. Filipino tennis star Alex Yala said the real work starts now, knowing that her magical run in the Miami Open will bring forth not just new opportunities, but also challenges. Yala became the first Filipino to reach the semifinals of a Women's Tennis Association WTA 1000 event after toppling Grand Slam champions Iga Swiatek, Madison Keys, and Jelena Ostapenko. She says, I recognize that these 2 weeks have opened the doors for so many opportunities for me, but along with those opportunities come a whole new set of obstacles I will have to navigate through. End quote. Yala wrote on her social media accounts. The real work starts now. Although her campaign ended at the hands of world number 4 Jessica Pegula in the semifinals, Yala said she leaves Miami beaming with pride and gratitude. Ranked number 140 in the world, Yala can now gain direct entry to the Grand Slam tournaments as she is poised to climb to a career high number 75 when the WTA releases its new rankings on Monday, March 31st. C'est tout pour les actualités. Maintenant, on va prendre une pause. Mais ne changez pas la station, Radio Kapwa va continuer.
Yeah, I'd like to dedicate the song to the memory of everyone I've loved who's passed on before me. Yeah, I keep y'all in my heart forever. I got your back no matter what. Dear life, it was good while it lasted. As I look at the past, I took you for granted. So before I'm put in this casket, I gotta make peace in search of God like when Muslims face East. At least the best part about death, y'all, every end's a fresh start. So whatever's next, let's not mourn and carry on with sad faces. Can't escape this or backspace this, so have faith, it's all planned. God damn, I'm in God's hands. Grateful I found myself in this lost land. This life, some take it cause they can't take it. With rose-colored glasses faded, they too jaded. Flesh decays, but not consequences of yesterdays. That's why I try to touch lives when I bless the stage. So when my essence fades with the winter time, here's a message placed to my fam and friends, I'm fine. As long as I had fewer failures and successes. A man of good intentions, I was taught all my lessons the hard way. Never ignore what your heart say. Love and laugh, partay and parlay. Can't keep hating your heart, so forget but don't forget. Play your part, make your mark. There's no living with regrets. Humble yourself and understand the bigger you grow. More you learn, the more you find just how little you know. When you're younger, you never think one day an icy grip will pull you under. But any second be a number. So ask yourself, are you prepared to go? Would you be ready to leave when your chest is heavy to breathe? Lights dim and the noise stops. Your voice drops, joints lock. Trust nobody stays, there's no choice, y'all. But in the meantime, while you're still here, work hard, play hard until the end, and don't feel fear. I never asked to come, but dear life, don't let me go. For years, I've wondered what's behind the storm. And now that I've arrived, I don't wanna turn the knob. I've never believed, but I'm begging with you, God. Don't take me yet, it's still a lot that I need to do. Is this the end where my road's been leading to?
Close your eyes, my son, I'll take away all the pain. Say goodbye to the sun and say goodbye to the rain.
Dear life, I never asked to be involved with you. Don't take it personal, but yo, there's so much wrong with you. All these years you'd only offer me some review. Born in solitude, so I do what I gotta do. I accept I can't change what's been manifest. Like I suspect that there's no such thing as accidents. In retrospect, pain push pursuits of happiness. So I expect that there must be something after this. Is hell a mind state or is it metaphysical? Is heaven a place or does it rep the pinnacle of achievement? Or could it be heaven and hell's identical? Two sides of the same coin, or am I being cynical? Everything under the sun has its time and place. So in my final days, my mistakes are mine to face. Through this chaos, I'm trying to change about my faith. But looking at the bigger picture, all I see are lines and shapes. Why do my loved ones have to be taken? And tell me, what does a dream code when you awaken? All I ask for is a sign, anything, just a statement. But talking to God, it's like a one-way conversation. So I tell myself perfection's a process. Whenever I dwell on all I've yet to accomplish, don't wanna waste away behind a desk in an office. Cause death comes, they need a threat, it's a promise. They need a threat, it's a promise. Death comes, they need a threat, it's a promise. Death comes, they need a threat, it's a promise. Death comes. Death comes. I never asked to come, but dear life don't let me go. For years I've wondered what's behind this door, and now that I've arrived, I don't wanna turn the knob. I've never believed, but I'm begging with you, God, don't take me yet. It's still a lot that I need to do. Is this the end where my road's been leading to?
Close your eyes, my son, I'll take away all the pain. Say goodbye to the sun and say goodbye to the rain.
Rest in peace to the homie Dwayne Foster, aka DK Deck. Yo, your spirit lives on, homie. Yeah, a big shout out goes to the homie Ralph Reception, aka Rap from the Bracadas. But yo, no lie, I literally just found out you passed away. Like 2-3 hours before I hit the studio to do the song. Yeah, rest in peace and one love to my sister Rachel Matter. Rest in peace to my Lola mommy. I still remember the last time I ever hugged you. Yo, for everybody, this song is for y'all. I'ma see you one day.
Bienvenue, on revient des pauses de publicité et vous écoutez à Radio Kapwa 90.3 FM CKUT. C'est moi, Fanny Christo. Nous sommes le mercredi 9 avril et il est temps pour les annonces de la communauté. L'hiver est fini, donc vous devez sortir et amusez-vous. En fait, n'oubliez pas à faire vos impôts. Mais oui, d'accord, on va discuter des événements pour cette semaine. Maintenant, trouvez un utile pour l'écriture et aussi des papiers où vous pouvez ouvrir votre application de calendrier. Et on commence. Aujourd'hui, après cet épisode, à 17h30, well, you can go to 6767 Côte-des-Neiges. I repeat, 6767 Côte-des-Neiges to exchange ideas, get informed, and take action. About what exactly? In the current context, Conseil Côte-des-Neiges are particularly concerned about critical issues such as the housing crisis, homelessness, new measures affecting new arrivals, the food crisis, and access to healthcare services. Faced with these challenges, CDC Côte-des-Neiges believes it is necessary to take a moment to reflect together and answer some questions, such as why did this crisis happen, how does it affect us, how can we collectively address it, etc., etc. Hosted by journalist Simon Coutu, Conseil CDN is hosting a panel called Face à la crise ensemble pour un avenir plus juste. For detailed info, you can visit their Instagram at cdc.cdn. And then tomorrow, Thursday, April 10th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at one of our favorite community hubs, Shift Concordia, join their staff and team for an inspiring celebration of community-based experiential learning at Concordia and through the Shift internship program. Listen to the panel discussion from 5 to 6 p.m. to hear firsthand from student interns and host organizations about their experiences, challenges, and the value of experiential learning in community settings. And you can check out their Instagram at shift.concordia to get the rundown. Next up, skip a date to Saturday, April 12th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. at Brasseur de Montréal and roll through, womp womp, to the roller party BDM for round 2 of Roller Dance, which will be hosted by Cosmic Skater. Bring your quad skates and come groove, chill, and share your footwork in a super cute space. A glass pavilion with polished concrete plus 360-degree bay windows. Yes, please. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at skatespace.ca and Cosmic Skater, and that is spelled with a K, okay? Après ça, le dimanche 13 avril from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. online via Zoom, join Filipino-Canadian Civic Action Network and Filipino-X community leaders as they talk about what this election means for Filipinos in Canada. Learn about the issues that will affect you and what you can do about it. Our very own Vero will be present as a special guest joining the discussion of what does the federal government do for you, how does that connect with the lives of Filipinos in Canada, what issues matter to you and touch your life, how can you get involved, etc., etc. You can visit their Instagram page at PhilCan Civic Action to register so you can explore these questions further. Finalement, April 17, 2025, that is next Thursday, not this Thursday, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at Shift Concordia again, join Community-Centered Knowledges for Ethics of Care, a vital discussion on the hidden costs of community care and how to sustain yourself while supporting others. Panelists will share insights on the hidden costs of community care and strategies for sustaining yourself while caring for others. You can find details at shift.concordia or community.ck. Whew, that was a mouthful to get through, and I know we are running out of time because if this is your first time listening and you don't know, the community announcements also signal the end of our broadcast. But don't worry, we'll be back again next week with the Radyo Kapwa, always bringing you the latest on the Filipino-X community in Montreal on 90.3 FM CKUT every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. This is Feni Cristo, signing out, so yeah, au prochain, ingat, and peace.